the following segment is directly for a lovely young lady who started Reignite Democracy Australia. Her name is Monica Smit. Now, she is doing a phenomenal job in exposing what Dan Andrews is doing in Victoria. And Monica, this video is directly for you. And obviously my viewers, but it's directly for you. Why? Whether we like it or not, whether we chose this or not, we're a part of the alternative media. We're prepared to have the discussions and the debates that the ABC, who we pay $1 billion a year, don't have. They don't have these discussions, and that's a problem. So this is what we're doing. You recently brought on an MP, which a lot of Australians like, called Craig Kelly. He's done an interesting job. He's been very outspoken against the Dan Andrews government. However, I think he's wrong. We think he's wrong on something, and that's the Defence Legislation Amendment Bill, which has come before our Parliament recently. Now, you sat down with Craig Kelly and you talked about this, and in a second I'm going to play a 4-minute video of you talking with him, a 4-minute segment. And we have a few problems. There's a few discrepancies with that. And we know Craig Kelly has said he's consulted widely, but we think there might be some problems. So please listen to the segment. Please listen to Riccardo's objections, because this isn't a hit on you or your organisation. We're both in the pursuit of truth, and we both want to get to the bottom of this. Because if either of us are wrong on this, then something's it needs to happen. So let's check out the video.
Already allowed so-called foreign troops or foreign service personnel to Australia. There's nothing with this legislation that changes in that respect.
So I'll just clarify a little bit. So are you saying that the only thing this legislation really does is it protects them just like the Australian troops are protected when they're doing the same work, even though they're foreigners? Is that correct?
Correct.
Right, okay. I don't know if you cut out a little bit there. You cut out a bit for
so
me.
There's nothing that changes the way about how we allow foreign troops into the country. There's nothing that this changes that allows foreign troops into the country. Have foreign troops often sounds a bit suspicious. But when we say foreign troops, non-Australian forces who actually come into Australia now, and they do so under exchange. The Navy, the Air Force, we've got them in the commandos, and we've got Australians serving overseas with the Americans and the Canadians and the British as well at the moment on these exchange programs. Right. So just basically to make sure that when they're operating, everyone has the same legal rights as protections here in Australia. If there's a major incident like that, let's God forbid there's never a major incident like the Lynn Cafe again, where there's the chance of rolling out a group of the commandos. But if there is, I think every Australian would want to see that team go into action as they've been trained. And so if you know the guy, if you've been the guy next to you, whether he's a Kiwi or an American or whatever it is, he's your comrade in arms.
Of course. And
you're going in to protect the free society. Yeah. And I'd rather, I'd rather the team be put together, even though there may be some New Zealanders and Americans and Kiwi and Canadians in there. Say to these guys, look, sorry, because you're from New Zealand, you have to actually go and sit back in the barracks and not go into protect our nation.
Well, yeah, Craig, that answers the question. And I just want, for anyone who is listening there, someone like Craig Kelly and someone like myself who runs RDA, if there was something wrong with this bill, we would be fighting it.
We'd be jumping up.
Yeah.
I'd be jumping up about it. And that's just not my opinion. I've asked a lot of other parliamentarians, okay, give me your opinion. Am I missing something here? Have I read something wrong? Like with Andrew Hastings, former SAS commander, Andrew, tell me how it worked with you. How did you actually go where you had sort of like foreign, so-called foreign troops, and you had people from overseas working with you? How did you actually go about it? And explain it all to me. So look, it's great that everyone's looking at this stuff. We've got to, and I'll tell you what you do. You've got to look at all this legislation with the finest of fine-tooth everyone that looked at it and went through and asked questions, that's exactly what we need to be doing all the time.
Great. Well, we'll move on to the next topic, but before we do, I'll just say that I think the reason, people don't trust the government right now. So if there's any crack of possibility that we're being fooled, I think some people go pretty hard, and I understand that, but everyone needs to know that it's okay. We've done our research. So
you'd much rather have that. I don't put overreaction. I'd much rather have that than the blasé. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm sure Dan will look after it.
Oh, I think that sentiment is over here in Victoria. There's no doubt about that. Now,
All right.
Without realising it, Craig Kelly has let the cat out of the bag. And I won't speak to his motive or his understanding on the subject. And the cat that he let out of the bag was this. He said, if there's another Lindt Siege Cafe, we'd like our exchange soldiers from other countries who are part of, say, an assault team to go in together. That makes sense. One small problem, the legislation specifically says this is not to be used in the delivery of force. The legislation is Defence Force aid to the civil community, which is fire, drought, flood, not Defence Force aid to the civil power, which is siege hostage resolution or using lethal force.
Okay, so
he has specifically, again, I'm not speaking to Craig Kelly's motives or understanding on the topic,
Sure.
but he is wrong. We are being conned because the legislation specifically says it's for fire, drought, flood. Now, second point, blanket legislation like that, and the point is we don't trust the government. Why should we trust to the government? These are the same people that can't release the names of 90 pedophiles. And there's countless reasons why we shouldn't trust Scott Morrison and his government. But you don't put blanket legislation like that out. We have a thing called a Status of Forces Agreement. Whenever a foreign military individual or formed body enters our nation or we work with them, the chain of command isn't automatically they must follow our orders or we follow their orders. The Status of Forces Agreement outlines very specifically what they are allowed to do or not allowed to do. Give you an example. When I was in the Middle East, I was the national commander of the forces over there. I had the authority to tell the commanding general, our troops will not engage in that operation because it is not in Australia's national interest to do so. It's known as the red card. There's no actual red card, but any national commander of Australian troops in a coalition setting has the authority to tell the commander, regardless of his rank, his or her rank, we're not playing.
Yep.
Okay. So that's covered under the Status of Forces Agreement. So if we have soldiers coming over here working with us, that's fantastic. But it can be done on a case-by-case basis. Sergeant Smith, USMC, is working with SAS. Great. Status of Forces Agreement, very specific, and that can cover immunity for certain jobs. For example, Lindt Siege Cafe. No problem. This blanket authorisation to give immunity to people, and he's let the cat out of the bag. He mentioned the delivery of force. The legislation doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So I don't trust them. It's got nothing to do with Kelly. I don't know whether Kelly understands it or not the point. But whoever's drafted it and briefed him either doesn't understand what the legislation says or they do and they're concealing the truth of it. So it's a lie. Now, to change this legislation to allow them to deliver lethal force requires one tiny amendment. Now, we've just seen New Zealand open up camps. We've heard stories about things going on in Australia at the moment. And do you really trust the government not to bring in foreign forces and foreign police? They might already be here. We don't know yet. That's how little we trust the government. And so, no, this is now a busted flush. This legislation should not be passed.
Yep.
And if it is, don't be surprised if you see foreign troops and police in Australia telling you what to do. And as I said before, if you think VicPol's bad, I've lived and worked with real police forces overseas, and they are brutal. Brutal. So, no, the Defence Legislation Enhancement Bill 2020, it's bad law, and it's unnecessary.
If we're wrong on this, guys, Monica specifically, please, we want a response. I mean, if we're wrong on this, then that's a correction we need to make.
Absolutely. Happy to be corrected.
Exactly. But we're both in the pursuit of truth here. And if we're right, and as you using your own words, you'd rather people have the knee-jerk reaction of saying, I don't trust you. If we're right, there is some serious problems we need to talk about with our government, including Craig Kelly and his analysis of this. If you're right, then that's okay. There's no risk. But there's a higher risk if we're right, and we do want a response from this, because you don't have to speak to us directly, but just address these concerns, because this is very concerning. You know, I've got a niece, I've got a family. I am very concerned about this, and I would definitely want to hear your response on this.